one of the travails of recording on Thursdays, so we can get you the latest news at the end of the week, is when things happen on Thursday. Sometimes we're going to miss it. So we're here recording a little later than usual. Thank you to our panel for being patient, but still not late enough. Springfield is still deliberating a number of pieces of legislation. So we're not going to pretend like we have all the answers here. We're going to tell you what's been talked about over the course of the week. And most importantly, give you the analysis for those things and let you know what you should be talking about. You'll know a few more details once you watch or listen to this than maybe we do right now. So, hey, you get one of those chances to be smarter than the experts. How's that feel? But in the meantime, we're going to do what we can to equip you. Speaking of being smarter than the experts, here we've got Dan Caulkins, who I think everyone likes to outsmart on this podcast, so we'll see who does it this week. He's a former state rep from the 88th District, also a council member from Decatur, a veteran of the Army, a businessman, and now a candidate yet again because your wife can't stand having you around the house. Dan, what's going on? I got that right?
Yeah.
The knowing smile and the nod. That's all you need to know. We also have with us first time Jim Reis, state policy expert. I would call you in a good way an insider. You, Jim, you're every time I'm talking to somebody like, oh, what did you talk to Jim about that? So you're a political insider for sure. Seasoned career in government and politics at every level, and we're excited to have your expertise this week on the podcast. What's going on?
Thanks. It's good to be here. I appreciate it.
We also have with us Michael and Chris, who is a seasoned. I don't know. I mean, Michael is seasoned in his experience knocking on doors and eating Chick-fil-A. Chris is seasoned in his experience being cranky and not ever smiling. I don't know.
Collin, once this petition season is over and I get a full 8 hours of sleep for what feels like the first time in months, my sunny disposition that I'm so well known for may in fact come back. But as I'm speaking, over 20,000 petitions are being processed just above me. And while that happens, I can't maintain the cheerfulness that, this podcast has come so renowned for. So we're going to give it our all. Butler and I, very tired, but we will be giving it our all this week. I promise you that.
All right, here's hoping. Fingers crossed. All right, it's going to be a veto session week this week. We have some other topics towards the end, but we are pretty much all veto session because it's the second week of veto, and if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen this week. So let's start on the first topic, something that we've been assured is going to get across the finish line, which is energy. We've been talking about this a number of times in the past couple of weeks. While this stupid bee flies around me, we got all sorts of problems. And we've talked about it ad nauseum. It looks like possibly this is going to cross the finish line. Again, we don't know yet, but possibly going to cross the finish line. And as we've talked about in previous weeks, this is not a bill that is being pushed by people who actually want to lower your energy costs in Illinois. As a matter of fact, key proponents of this bill are actually going to directly increase the line items for working families and manufacturers and all energy consumers in this state. We're being promised that it will lower costs down the road. Just trust us, by the very same people who have asked us to trust them over and over and over as they have continued to push forward bills in Illinois that have raised our energy costs. So I don't know how much faith you guys have in these same people who keep asking us to just trust them. But there's a reason why key groups like the manufacturers, like businesses, like the Farm Bureau and others have come out and said, nuh-uh, we don't like this bill. Stop. Don't pass it. Looks like Springfield's still going to pass it anyways. We don't know yet. What do you guys think?
Oh, we worked on this bill years and years ago, not this particular bill, but energy. I don't know if you remember back about 4 years ago when Freedom Caucus, did the energy tour. And we told everybody, we told the governor, I mean, directly, other members of our House caucus, that CEJA was going to dramatically impact everybody that is plugged into the grid. And didn't want to listen. And so here we are, and now we're going to do it again. Part of this bill that I find, and I guess in full disclosure, I am running for the Macon County Board, but part of this bill directly impacts local government. It further complicates or restricts siting. It also reduces the amount of fees that can be associated. So you're going to now tell counties how much they can charge to
Yep.
site a solar or a wind project. Um, I was there, the compromise, remember the compromise? Well, we don't want to have to go township by township. We're going to let the counties, decide on zoning and setbacks and whatnot. And as soon as you made a deal, as soon as the Republicans made a deal with the Democrats, they reneged on it. And this is exactly why, if you're running for office and you want to try to make deals with Democrats, just know and understand they will back up on you. They will stab you in the back as soon as they get a chance. They don't honor their word. They don't honor their promises. You just cannot. You cannot deal with the Democrats in Illinois and expect them to uphold their word.
Well, I think, Dan, one of the biggest things that's frustrating here is the moving target that the left has sort of created in the state, because as we say, hey, listen, we told you that CJA, FEJA, and all these bills are going to raise energy rates. They're like, no, actually, they went down a little bit just before they went up because of data centers. It's all data centers. If it wasn't for that, they would have kept going down. It's like, okay, but there's more than one state in the union. There's 49 other states in this country. And when you look at some of the states like California who have pushed forward on this path that we're on, and you see their energy rates are through the roof. I'm going to show a graph in a little bit. Like, we know where this path leads. It's where we've been saying it's going to lead. So oh no, they were going down. It was just the data centers. I was like, no, this is a supply and demand problem. It's basic economics. And so when you artificially reduce supply, and then yes, demand has gone up. We get that. Demand has dramatically gone up thanks to Pritzker and their economic development plans. So it's not us that raised that demand. But yeah, demand has gone up, but you've also decreased supply. Of course, that has an impact on people's bills. And we're seeing this summer the sticker shock that working families saw when they opened up their bills. Just wait, because we already know June 1st next year, it's going to be even worse. Like, this is not a problem that's going away.
These rates have gone up well before any data centers have been built. Our rates have gone up the last 2 years. There's no data center in Macon County. This is a problem that's been created by Democrats. When I was on the energy committee, I said, if you want to achieve your goal of 100% renewable, or even 50% or 75% renewable, there's only one way to do it, and that is to take out the fossil fuel industry. You can reduce the amount of kilowatts that are produced by coal and gas. And yes, now all of a sudden your percentages go up from wind and solar. You just have taken off the grid our reliable, cheap, reliable energy source, our core producers. Yeah. And that's what they've done. And it's Wisconsin, Indiana, Virginia, Massachusetts, New York. These places are not only reopening nuclear reactors, they're going to build nuclear reactors. The federal government has pledged like $60 billion towards new construction, and Illinois will get none of it.
Yeah, so we've been told that in this bill, again, we don't have final details, but we've been told it will have a provision that finally raises that restriction, allows nuclear plants to be built in Illinois. Obviously, I'll believe it when I see it, because Illinois tends to find some way to screw things up like that. But either way, you look at some of the things in this bill. It's ratepayers, regardless of how much you pay in energy, you're going to be paying for this battery storage. And we know, we've been told specifically how much more energy is needed. As I saw in some reports, we need an additional 31 to 46 gigawatts of generation. That's what they need. And we're talking batteries, which isn't generating anything. Storage is a piece. Like Texas, other states, storage is a piece, but if we just do the one piece, that is not going to solve any of the problems that we're going to face. And oh, by the way, if you talk about those closure of those plants, there's supposed to be a study done that details the adequacy of our energy resources, and it's due by December 15th. And as part of that study, there may be a way to say, you know what, we're not going to close some of our cleaner power plants in Springfield or some of these other areas. Well, this bill pushes that back into 2026. So even the one way we might have avoided further decreasing our supply in this state, this bill pushes that back. So this idea that this isn't just yet another key piece of the environmentalist agenda that is going to run contrary to what working families need, which is lower costs. That's what we're seeing right now again.
Well, and the nuclear piece was supposed to be the carrot that got people on board, and it's also then the trap to say, well, they voted against nuclear, and nuclear would have solved the problem here, and everything else. I mean, you cannot shut down energy production to pursue a political agenda, and then come back and fix it with duct tape and whatever to try and make it work. We forget that the end user is small businesses, families, people in Illinois that, they're trying to make ends meet. And, one of the things that we hear over and over is my energy bill has doubled. And, we're coming to them saying, and this will date me with the old, the Lucy reference where you put down the football and it almost sounds like Wimpy from Popeye. I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. It's that whole thing of I got a smile from Chris. We'll down the road we're gonna cut your rates. Well, a $10 rate cut on a $600 electrical bill. I mean, that really doesn't pencil out for most families.
Yeah. Oh, and that's I mean, Jim, everything you said is 100% accurate. The problem is that's if we actually see that decrease,
Correct.
right? I mean, that's if, but the reality is when the studies have been done, I know the manufacturers did a study, and they said that a small food processor using 1,400 kilowatts of energy are going to see their monthly rate increase almost $1,500. I mean, it's working families are seeing it, manufacturers are seeing it, and then we're supposed to just believe the same people who over and over and over have promised, just give us one more bill, just one more energy bill, and this is the one we promise that will lower your rates. Like, we've been living through this for how long now?
Well, but the other piece of this too is, as Republicans, we need to come with some solutions.
Yep.
And we can't just sit here and sit and vote no and say, well, because the need for more power is real, and we need to generate the electricity. So we need to come with some solutions. If we're going to sit there and say, well, no, we're not going to vote for this, even though it adds nuclear, it adds some of the things that we see as solutions. I mean, I think it's on us to come up with some solutions as well, and not just be sitting here voting no.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We've offered solutions. We've offered solutions for years. We offered solutions during the siege. We talked about reuniting the state of Illinois instead of dividing it in half between MISO and PJM. We have the most nuclear power plants of any state in the country, and yet we've cut ourselves in half. So now we have the upstate power generation that's going all over the Northwest. Whereas if we hadn't done that, if we hadn't broken up the state of Illinois and done like Indiana, Texas, whatever, we'd have kept that power, the grid development, vertical rather than in a horizontal fashion.
And that's a great point, because I mean, it is a federal. I mean, it's a nationwide problem, and the PJM and MISO separation. I mean, that doesn't necessarily have to be there. And what would that save, Representative?
Well, what it would do is we would not be buying electricity, on the open market, competing with other states. We'd be generating enough power in the state of Illinois, reliable. We'd have a good, solid, reliable backbone of nuclear power, not to cut out the coal and the natural gas generators, but what we already have. And I asked them, what's it cost? What's the deal? How can we go back and fix this problem? The other part of the solution is that the MISO and FERC tell Illinois, you can't close these plants down. It's a national emergency. We have a need for these. Every electric watt that every state can generate is necessary to power the economy of this country. And MISO just goes, well, we can't do. Yes, you can. MISO can do it. They can make a recommendation, and FERC, the federal group, can absolutely tell the state of Illinois, you can't shut down those power plants.
Well, FERC has done that in other states. I can't point to it exactly, but I know they have. And that would be something that, right now we're digging coal, sending it to Indiana,
and buying the electricity back. And we're
Yeah.
buying the electricity back that it
I
generates.
mean, it's nuts, but it does fit, the governor's talking points about how he's leading the way on green energy and fixing the environment.
Which
But
is the whole point, right, Jim?
yeah, I mean,
That's
that's
it.
really,
That's
it's the point is I'm running for president.
Yeah.
So
Well,
look at my
I
agenda.
guess,
I think-
I guess when they burn that coal in Indiana,
Well, it goes further east. It doesn't come back this way. So
it doesn't come back this way. It goes the other direction.
yeah. We don't send it to Missouri or Iowa because that would be bad for Illinois.
The wind would bring it here.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, let me.
Chris, hold on, Chris, go ahead. You've been trying to jump in. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna, because we were talking about the Democrats' angle here, and this is another example of an issue where you give Democrats an inch and they're taking a mile here, because voters like the concept of green energy. Voters like the idea of solar panels and not blowing a hole in the ozone layer, like that's the old frame from like the 90s. People want like a greener world. They like environmentalism. They like those concepts. So it plays really well when the Democrats say things like, hey, we're going to, fight climate change. We're going to push green energy. The problem is that the way they do it, it's harming these same people. But the Democrats get away with it by just saying, "Oh, we're actually going to make your cost cheaper. Just give us some time." And I really like Jim's point regarding the alternative energy plan for the state of Illinois. I think the Republicans and more traditionally minded Democrats and independents, they need to keep pushing this narrative that like this is actually hurting as a homeowner, as a business owner in the state of Illinois. And there's actually us on this podcast know this is one of the few issues where there's like a fix it button, and it's called nuclear, that nobody wants to talk about because the Soviets couldn't figure out how to boil water in 1985. So we can't talk about nuclear if you're in politics. But it really is the fix it button. So I think that Republicans and those on the opposite sides of the energy debate, they need to present the plan. And I think it could include green energy. I think it could include things. I think it could include things like solar and wind and things like that. It should. But unless you actually present the plan, the Democrats are continuously going to have a monopoly on this issue. And all the people of Illinois are going to hear is things are going to get better. You have to trust us as their energy rates get higher, and they're not actually presented with an alternative. I think that's what the key.
But I think the people need to understand, if you're watching or listening to this podcast, is this is a prime example of the power of messaging. We did some messaging work and some polling around this issue back when CEJA was a big fight, and even a little bit with FEJA too. And what we saw is that it was clear the messaging that the left was using was vastly superior to the messaging on the right. But we could not get those people who were fighting against these to actually listen and engage and be better at messaging. And so you don't hear them. Chris just talked about how it's about not blowing a hole in the ozone. Obviously, we're not saying that anymore, but it's about fighting climate change. They never say those words. Never. It's about green jobs. It's about lowering costs for working families. They are rock solid on their messaging, the group that is pushing this year after year. Meanwhile, on our side, we continue to just be like, why do we keep losing? Well, if you let them continue to own the message on this, just like Chris said, you're never going to defeat them. They are doing an incredible job of messaging on this. They've made it about jobs. They've made it about affordability, when the reality is maybe some jobs are being created, but not as many as are being destroyed. And when it comes to affordability, over and over, we're seeing that's just a complete lie. So they're great at messaging, but the facts don't actually back it up. But we don't compete on the same level playing ground, and we still wonder why we're not being successful. We're working off old playbooks on the message here, while the left is dominating us on this playing field. So we've got to get a heck of a lot better.
If you want to talk about economic development, I mean, any community in Illinois that would allow a nuclear plant to go in would have people coming. There'd be all sorts of businesses looking to relocate there to develop manufacturing,
data centers, manufacturers, and everything in between.
Yep, anything. I mean, look at Park City. Look what they did when they said, "Hey, we can provide energy for anyone who comes," and they're working really hard to do that, and they've grown tremendously. And the whole Salt Lake City area has done that, and a lot of that is just basically guaranteeing people access to power.
Well, and I think I want to close on this and then we'll move to the next topic. I mentioned a graph. So I apologize to our panel, but for those who are watching, you're going to see Lane will bring this up in post. There's a graph of the cost, the average cost of electricity by U.S. states. So it's cents per kilowatt hour. And when you see there is Illinois is at 15.6. It's the third highest in the Midwest, behind Michigan and Wisconsin, who are more expensive, but, or I'm sorry, who are more expensive. But we are more expensive than Minnesota, Indiana, Iowa, Missouri. And I'm just going to stop there for a second. Unless you've been around, you don't realize how big of a deal even that is. Because the one thing Illinois had was cheap, reliable energy. The fact that we're now third highest in the Midwest is a big deal. I know we're all used to being the highest cost of everything in the Midwest, but the one thing that we had was energy. The fact that we are now the third highest, that's a huge problem. And then Lane will bring it up again here. I want to point to, like, you look at California, they're 30.1. They're almost double what we are. And so we have these people who are basically following the California agenda. And in some cases, they literally say it. Oh, California passed this. We should try it. Like, we know what this path leads to. And they keep telling us, oh, just trust us. Just trust us. Give us 2 or 3 or 4 more bills and the costs will go down. Like, but we've seen this entire agenda. We're just, a little behind California. Look at their energy rates at 30.1, almost double ours. You're telling us that magically, if we follow the same path, our energy won't go up like theirs did. Like it you can see it. Again, we don't live in a vacuum. We have seen this agenda imposed in other states, and we have seen it raise costs. So when you tell us, oh, just give us one more bill, and this time we promise costs will go down, of course we don't believe it, because A, it's not been true every other time you said it, and B, we've seen what it does in other states. So if you're on right of center Illinois, you've got to continue to fight on energy. This issue is not going away. Next June, you're going to see bills even higher. It's already locked in. It's already going to happen. We already know it. And so if you're running for office and you're talking about affordability in this state, which you should be, next June, this is going to be another hot issue, even if it disappears a little bit over the winter. So keep talking energy. It's going to be a big deal in the 2026 elections. All right, let me take us to the next topic. So if there's any issue today that was maybe the main reason why we were delaying recording this podcast, it's transit, because it has changed probably 4 or 5 times just today on Thursday. So we have no idea where this is going to end up. We're told that negotiations are ongoing. The thought was nothing was going to happen, but apparently the governor's people are pushing on this. Finally, apparently they finally decided to be part of the program the last day. So we don't know where this is going to end up. So I think for us, it's really good to talk about the various revenue proposals that have been put out there, and are any of them palatable, or are all of them going to be bad for anybody who votes for this? We can talk about the transit or the governance reforms, because I got some problems with that. So there's a lot here we can talk about. What we can't tell you is what was in the final package and did it pass or did it not. You know that, we don't. But I want to open it up. What do you guys think about just what's going on right now? And in this House version, we're talking about an amusement tax, which supposedly has been stripped out now. We're talking about an increase to the RTA sales tax, which I'm hearing is still in. This new billionaire tax, which people don't even know if it's legal. Speed cameras. Chris, I'm sure, has lots of thoughts about more speed cameras, because there's never corruption around speed cameras. Event surcharges for large events.
There's a difference. Red light cameras and speed cameras, two different animals there, buddy.
Maybe, I don't know. Either way, so there's a lot of revenue enhancements that are being talked about, of course, that will hit working families throughout the state. So I'm just going to open it up. What do you guys think about this? And are they going down a good path here or not?
Well, I think we know it's not a good path. What I'm hearing is that they want to dip into the road fund again. We put that in a lockbox for a reason constitutionally, and now it's transit, road and transit. I'm hearing that they want to take $800 million, which is the sales tax on gasoline, and put it into the transit. And then they want to take the interest that the road fund earns and put that into this RTA, CTA Metro bill. Then this will go on forever. I mean, this isn't just a one-time fix, fill a hole. We're going to raid the road fund again, like we used to balance the budget. Now they're going to raid the road fund to fix problems that they have up in the northeast part of Illinois. I'm sure there's going to be crumbs and little things sprinkled around the rest of the state, that, will give them some kind of cover. Oh, this covers all of Illinois. We've got $200 million for downstate transit. It's a terrible bill. We don't even know what the deficit is. I mean, was it 800 million? Is it 200 million? This is a typical Democrat grab. We just want more money. We do it in education. Now we're going to do it in transit. We've done it in healthcare. Just give us more money and it'll all be better.
Yeah.
Well, it comes down to some philosophical stuff as well. What do we want? If you want transit, you want public transportation, there's an expense to that. And then you've got to figure out how you're going to pay for it. And what are you going to not do in order to provide that? And, Illinois, part of the problem in Illinois is we never want to tell ourselves no on anything. And, then we try and spread out so everybody gets something, right? And so we're going to give transit money to downstate. Well, downstate doesn't really need transit money. We need road money, but expanding transit downstate doesn't make sense. But there's we'll cut you in on this deal so we can get your votes. And it's just, we've got to decide what we need as a country, what we need as a state, what we want, what we're willing to pay for. And that's just not a discussion that anyone is ever having.
Yeah, I hear that. I think the latest is that downstate would get 220 million. They said, and obviously it's in order to get them to support this, and
yeah.
But I think it's the big thing that I want to sort of ask. We'll never get this, but clearly there's been a concession made here. To make sure that downstate to them is everything outside of Chicagoland, that they're going to get some piece of this. But I have lived through this as a suburban Chicagoland resident, that the group that always gets screwed the most is the suburbs. And what I want to know is, where's money coming from and going to? If downstate's getting 220 million or so out of a 1.5 to 2 billion package, then they're giving more than they're getting. Not by a lot, but they are giving more than they're getting. We know Chicago's getting bailed out. We know CTA is getting bailed out here. That's the major point of why this is happening. So I want to know, how much are the suburbs, how much are the collar counties putting into this versus how much are we getting out? Because it's pretty common that we get at most 60 cents back on the dollar, 65 cents back on the dollar in the suburbs. Downstate, with respect, actually gets more than $1 back.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Chicago, Cook County tends to do decently well, break even, but it's the collar counties, it's the suburbs, it's sometimes suburban Cook. We're the ones that are often screwed. And as I'm looking at just the back of the napkin math here, I bet if they were ever transparent with where money comes in for this and where it's going out to, it's the suburbs. Yet again, they're getting screwed, even though Metro is actually mostly whole. They don't need a ton of this money. Pace is mostly whole. They just need a little bit to get through. It's CTA that's mostly getting bailed out, and of course downstate that's getting a cut so that they're it looks like it's a statewide program. So I think this is another situation where we in the suburbs are getting screwed.
And it's funny, Collin, because the suburban aspect of this with Metro and Pace, obviously Metro goes in the city of Chicago, Pace also somewhat goes in the city of Chicago, but Pace and Metro are mostly suburban. They mostly service suburbanites. And the suburbanites are going to be the one who are losing power in all of this, which is completely insane to me. You have two, branches of the RTA here with Pace and Metro, which could they be run better? Sure. This is government we're talking about. It's not supposed to run as effectively as possible, especially in this state. But we're actually punishing the people who are doing a somewhat halfway decent job running their little branch of bureaucracy, their fiefdom, as they're calling these little transit groups. We're actually punishing them. We're saying, oh, you guys who have been picking the people on these boards, you're no longer allowed to pick them. We're going to consolidate the power to pick the people who are running the boards effectively in the governor's office and the mayor of Chicago and the Cook County board president and like all the other people who are supposed to be picking the representatives on these boards. You have no say anymore. You've done a pretty good job up until this point picking people, but now you've done too good of a job. We can't let government operate this effectively. We have to go bail out the CTA. Yep. Okay, and that's what is so frustrating to me about transit is that it seems like the people who actually believe in good government, be they Republican, Democrat, whoever, are the ones actually being punished here. Poor Kirk Dillard is making up numbers out of thin air just to try and get them to back off of this because he knows he's probably first. You're telling me they're going to keep letting Kirk Dillard, the Republican, be in charge of all the trains and the buses? Come on, man. He'll be the first to go. So they're trying to figure out a way around this, and they're not going to find it, I don't think. I don't think they're going to.
Well, we detailed the governance changes on a previous episode. We went way in depth, so we don't have time to do that today. But Chris is right. I mean, there are numerous instances within this bill, these governance reforms that take away power from the collar counties and consolidate that power under the governor and under the Cook County Board president. Brandon Johnson keeps about the same amount of power. He gives back a little bit and gets a little bit, but it's Pritzker and Preckwinkle who come out big with this reform.
Well, and the other question that I have about all of this is, some of the cliff that we're heading for has got to be decreases in ridership because there are fewer people working in Chicago, and that's not likely to change quickly. I mean, that's something that the headcount tax that Brandon Johnson wants to put in there, and all those things, they're trying to fix a systemic problem and something that's just fundamental to this, that you can throw money at it, but people aren't riding as much. And
there's been this mentality, Jim, about like if you build it, they will come. Like if we just offer more trains, more people will go on those trains. But you're 100% correct. Go talk to anybody throughout the suburbs. How often are you going into the city anymore? Like that is the major part of the problem. And under Brandon Johnson, it's not like that's going to get better next year or the year after.
Well, and I'm an anomaly because I live downstate, but I appreciate the city of Chicago, and I think Chicago could be a much bigger gem in the Illinois constellation. I think it has an awful lot to offer that we squander. So I'm not one to say because it benefits Chicago we shouldn't do it. If downstate needs $200 million for transit, I'd like to know where it needs $200 million for transit. I'd like to see where that is, and but I'm not opposed to doing things to make sure that we have good quality, safe, functional mass transit in the city of Chicago for the people who live there. But I also think that part of it has to be if you live there and you use it, you pay for it.
Yeah, agreed.
I thought it was rather funny, the press conference that the Senate had, and they're talking about, well, we need this mass transit. We have to keep it going and expand it and do all these things because not just the working class people, but we want the CEOs to ride the train and the bus. So, I can see these people. Oh yeah, I'm getting on the bus and I'm going to work today, honey. Pack me a lunch.
I live in Quincy, and Amtrak runs to Quincy, and I use it to access the city of Chicago. But I don't consider that mass transit. And I think that the city does, when they're talking about the transit problem, they're including the Amtrak rail from, St. Louis and Carbondale and Champaign and Springfield and Quincy. They're considering that as part of the mass transit issue, and it just isn't.
No, that's not. No,
I mean, I think it's a different world down here, and obviously there are a lot of legislators that are in the suburbs in Chicago that are riding transit, on a regular basis, or maybe their constituents are. But, there's a lot of people in these counties in Southern Illinois, especially deep Southern Illinois, that have probably never ridden on transit in their life, or they don't have access to transit. If they wanted, if you're in Hamilton County, it's like, well, yeah, you can drive to Alton or Carbondale and get on the train and go to Chicago, but you're driving, an hour 30 to get to the train. So I don't know what the $220 million they're promising us downstaters is going to go to. But it just not practical. Doesn't make a lot of sense. People down here have cars and they drive themselves.
Yeah. Well, Butler, you understand a lot of it's going to go to consulting fees. You got to pay some NGO to look at, how the environmental cost of adding another bus going from Edwardsville to Cahokia. I don't even know how transit works, but like that's what, and that's of course, it's $100,000 consulting fee for somebody to make a PowerPoint presentation that ChatGPT told them to do. But that's what that $200 million is going to. Let's not be fools here. We know what $220 million for downstate transit actually means, because like I think it was Butler who said it, or Dan who said it, but like, yeah, could downstate transit be better? Yeah, but could it be? What does $200 million get you in downstate transit? Are we going to have high speed rail down there now, guys? Like, come on.
I don't know. We're going to find out, obviously, as we learn what's in what they pass or don't pass. I'm going to close with this, just to put a bow on top. Again, we don't know what revenues, as they call them, they're going to put in this bill to cover it, if it even passes. But I think a larger point to just make is the reason why Democrats are struggling so much to find passable revenue enhancements is because they've already done this over and over and over for this cliff and this crisis and this thing here and this thing there. Like, we're in a state where if you look at all the metrics, we are paying among the highest taxes in the country. So if Democrats think, oh, there's an easy way over here, we can find a tax that people won't hate. You've already done that 30 times. Like, so when you think about, okay, well, maybe we'll put an amusement tax on, you really think that voters are going to be okay paying that amusement tax on the 17 different streaming services we need to have nowadays just to keep up with our various shows? Like, there aren't any easy taxes left to raise. Maybe they're going to raid the road fund end. Maybe you're right on that. But like, this is their problem, is when you live in a state where the answer is always tax and spend, tax and spend, tax and spend, which Chris Welsh admitted a year ago. When that's your caucus, when that's your leadership in the state, you start to run out of easy taxes to raise. There are no painless taxes left for the Democrats. Whatever they do here, they're going to answer for at the ballot box next November.
Well, and I know you're trying to move on and we want to wrap this up, but that amusement tax is particularly insidious because it's intended to direct the voters' ire at Hulu and Netflix, because it's going to be on their bill and it's not going to show as a tax. So it's smoke and mirrors, and it's making somebody else wear the cloak for the tax increase that we're doing. And, as Republicans, we need to be better at messaging that and saying, hey, it's not Hulu's fault. It's not Ameren's fault. The fault is the legislators that are passing these bills.
And I wonder if they'll do the same thing they did several times before, where they'll actually make it not legal for those streaming services to break that tax out, because they tend to do that. That's where they say you can't break this tax out, you just got to put it in your total price.
That's right.
I wonder if they do that again. We'll see. All right, let's go to the next one here. This one will be quick because we really don't have much on it. Pritzker and a number of others put out that they wanted to decouple from some of the federal tax benefits that were going to be flowing through to working families and manufacturers in the state. Since then, I've seen kudos to Sue Resin, who stepped up and said, not going to happen. And there's some other elected officials on the Republican side have pointed to this and said, everybody pay attention. So kudos to them for putting a spotlight on this. I've not heard much, and I continue to ask people, what is going on with this? Because Pritzker has said we have, almost a $300 million deficit. His plan to fill that deficit is with this decoupling idea. As of Thursday at 4:00, as we're recording this, we don't have an answer on this or any news anywhere about something being done. So maybe you're going to know when you watch this, but it's still something to keep an eye on, because the state of Illinois' deficit hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there. By the way, we told you it was going to be there months ago when they passed an unbalanced budget, but hey, whatever. Whoever listens to us.
Well, it's $1 billion. It's not 300 million. I mean, that decoupling is taking away the tax relief at the federal level. It's taken away from small businesses and families and people who really need that relief. Mm-hmm. And it's doing it just because, once again, the state of Illinois and the governor can't say, well, you know what, we're going to live within our means, and this tax cut happened. It's going to cut our revenue. And so we got to live with that. Oh, no. We're gonna decouple from it, and we're still gonna stick it to small businesses and families, and the tax relief you thought you were gonna get. No, you're not getting that, because we can't say no.
Yeah, the ironic thing is, when they talk about trying to bring businesses into Illinois and bring jobs, one of those things they're trying to decouple from is a specific line item that incentivizes manufacturers to open new plants in America, to start new businesses, to create jobs here, made in America. And that's one of them they want to do away with. I mean, that's just the frustrating thing is, they say it's tax the rich, but that's just not what's happening here.
No, not at all.
Anyone else have some quick thoughts on this topic?
I mean, I just think you look at the list of potential taxes related to transit, you look at this, and how many of these are taxing the rich? I mean, I guess the capital gains tax that may not even be legal, but you talk about, decoupling from the federal tax reduction that the Trump administration and Congress passed. You talk about, Spotify, Netflix, a $5 charge on any concert ticket if there's more than 10,000 attendees.
A sales tax on all suburban or Chicagoland residents.
Yeah, it's not taxing the rich. It's taxing regular everyday people, and it's especially, insidious because they're taxing all the things that are enjoyable in our lives in this state. You can't watch Netflix, you can't watch Hulu, you can't stream music, you can't go to a concert, you can't buy Zen, like just one thing after another.
Well, and Michael, I think it's important to note, I guess
you can't gamble, don't gamble unless you're Pritzker, then fly to Vegas and rake in 1.4 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good rant, Michael. It puts you in the early lead over Chris for sure. But I think when it comes to like the sales tax specifically, I mean, a big thing so far that we heard that they're going to be pushing as part of the transit package is an increase in the RTA sales tax. That's a indiscriminate sales tax on all residents. And how many times did we hear during the grocery tax conversation how regressive the sales tax is overall? And yet here we go. Democrats are going to raise another regressive tax and then somehow say that they're the fiscally responsible party, the party that's lowering taxes on suburban voters. Like, that's going to be their TV ads. We lowered your taxes, but they didn't.
What, the 1% sales tax on groceries that didn't even go to the state of Illinois was just mean and uncalled for. But then you look at this list and it's just one thing after another.
Yeah, all on working families. All right, let me take us to the next one here. Let's talk redistricting. This one is also kind of quick because basically we're going to say, hey guys, this was never going to happen. We told you that, but let's still open it up. Hakeem Jeffries and DC really want Springfield to do redistricting, and Springfield's left the door open, though from everything I'm hearing, it's not actually open. They're just saying that it's open. But this is the conversation. Happen. You think it's going to happen?
It's going to happen.
Ooh, all right. That's Jim. I want to hear from you then. What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, how in the world can J.B. Pritzker let other governors deliver Democrat seats if he's trying to be the leader in the country for the Democrat Party? So, and, again, if they don't pick up a seat where they can, they're not, it's Illinois. If they're not cheating, you're not trying, right? And there's just no way that Pritzker lets that one go.
I mean, logically, that makes a lot of sense. I obviously everyone's saying no, it's not happening. Maybe that's a smokescreen. But your logic, I can't poke any holes in that.
Well, I mean, how do you?
Dan showing off some swag over there.
How do you shift, the playing field nationally, and everybody else is playing, and how does somebody like Governor Pritzker sit back and say, well, I had an opportunity to pick up a Democrat seat and I didn't?
Well, and Jim, listen, to lend credence to what you're saying, this governor has shown a proclivity to chase every piece of earned media he can get nationally in his attempt to become relevant in the presidential race. So why would he skip this one? I'll be honest, I still don't know that it's going to happen, but you're making a pretty solid point.
Well, and they can leave a lot of the state alone and carve up one Republican district and strengthen a bunch of Democrats and not change their playing field that much by spoking outside of the city of Chicago to the Peoria area. And they can leave downstate relatively. They can leave 17, 13, 15, and 12 alone and redistrict the rest of the state and pick up a seat. And I don't see any way, and it doesn't have to be done this week.
Jim, that's the thing I want to ask about, and I know Chris, you want to get in, and I do want to hear your thoughts. But Jim, I keep hearing that it doesn't have to be done this week. How is it legal that you've got candidates who have filed? Like I heard Jeffries say it, I heard Welch say it, I heard others say that it doesn't have to be done this week. So you're right that that's what they're saying, but logically, I don't understand how after candidates have filed for an election in districts that currently exist, that somehow they would be allowed to change that. What's the legality of that?
Well, when you own the state Supreme Court, tell me what's illegal.
Okay, fair.
I think, though, once you start getting into congressional districts, that becomes a federal issue, and you're going to be before the United States Supreme Court. I mean, they can't get away. It's not state rep and state senate. I just think logistically, how do you do this? I mean, people are filing this week. We got 2 more, Friday and Monday, 2 more days of filing for candidates. You're going to redraw these districts and people are going to have filed for one thing and then, oh, you can't run for that anymore. Sorry, we just changed the maps.
Well, go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Jim, I love you. I wish you had kept going because poor Chris, you'd see his head explode.
The first thing, this is an inside baseball. This is just how I think they would do it. What they would do is they would basically say, these maps are invalid by law. These petitions are therefore invalid by law. And what we're going to do is everybody has their primary for everything else on March 17th. And then we get halftime entertainment to get on June 28th or whatever day of the week that Tuesday would be, late June. And then they say that's when all the congressional primaries are going to be.
Yep.
Okay.
They create a congressional special election. And, if they wait until January, and again, I'm not positive about this right now. I think it's a supermajority vote. If they wait till January, it's a simple majority. And if there's Democrats that don't want this to happen or they're not in favor of it, they don't need as many votes. So I think they can string this out, and they've shown that they'll change the rules. I mean, they've changed the primary dates.
Yeah.
They've changed ballot harvesting. They've changed the rules on voting at their whim.
They redistricted the judiciary in Madison County while they were circulating.
And why would they start saying, well, this rule is hard and fast now when they never have?
Well, the big point that I want to make in regards to this is that this is proving a point that I've been making. I don't think I've ever made it on the podcast, but for people who know me politically and who've had a beer with me or a cigarette or a cigar with me over the past 5 years, when we talk redistricting, this is the point I've always made, is that they will not, in the long term, the Democrats are going to have a hard time justifying, even under the Voting Rights Act, of having 3 black congressional districts. And if you actually look at the numbers, which people seem not to do, one of the black congressional districts, the 7th, which is currently in a clown car right now, isn't actually as African-American as you think it is. It's about 50-50, not 50, it's plurality-wise, half, like 30, it's like 40% black, 40% white. And nobody actually recognizes that fact. So if you want to pull out more Democratic votes from Cook County and the Chicagoland area, you have to carve up one of those districts. And this is why I've been like, I'm like itching right now. Like I'm calling Democrats to be like, I will share this map with nobody. I promise you. I will sign an affidavit, an NDA. I don't care. Can somebody please send me whatever Hakeem Jeffries is cooking? Because I want to see it. I want to see it for the love of the game of politics. And I know that map would be an abomination to the human eyes. But I want to see how they would even conceivably do this, which I've seen the maps. We'll get to my opinion on maps later on in this episode, everyone. There's a sneak preview. But it is nigh impossible to carve out another Democratic congressional district and not give the middle finger to another black representation district. And that's why I don't think it's actually going to happen. Because it's one thing if the Democratic Party screws over the Republicans, because who cares about the Republicans? Nobody. Nobody cares about the Republicans in the state. Laugh at the Republicans. They lost a congressional district. Who's going to cry for them? Nobody. But if they screw over the African-American vote, the black vote, their base, that's a different story. That's
other communities where they can connect pockets of African American voters downstate into
But
one of those.
that's not going to get you close to where you would think. Like, yeah, Robin Kelly's district goes all the way down the Rantoul, and there's a sizable African American population in Rantoul, Illinois. That's fine, but it's not going to be the same thing as if you take the western suburbs, like west of Oak Park, like Maywood and Maywood, Broadview, and those communities. If you start throwing those in DuPage County or something like that to make another more Democratic district, that's going to completely dilute the representation in the 7th district. Which, if you read between the lines of this redistricting conversation, what the Black Caucus is saying, that's basically what they're trying to do. That's basically what they're going to end up having to do, and I don't think it's going to end up working. That's why I don't think this is going to happen. When I first heard this a couple weeks ago, I thought logistically it couldn't happen, and now after hearing this debate between the Black Caucus and Hakeem Jeffries and the sinister DC talking heads, I genuinely don't think the Democrats are going to take this big of a leap with the Black community and Black representation, because these are their people. You can't screw over your people in this regard. You can screw over Republicans and nobody will care.
All right, let's get Jim's thoughts.
I would have agreed with you until the members of the Black Caucus at the federal level joined with Hakeem Jeffries and said, we want this to happen. And
okay, so the guy who's going to get screwed over here is Danny Davis. He's not running for anything, so what does he care? Yeah, Robin Kelly's running for Senate, so what does she care? And Jonathan Jackson, they're going to take care of him. So what do any of those three people, and if they're in another state, they don't care about the way the district lines are drawn in Illinois. They just want the extra representation in Springfield. So that's why
all right. This is supposed to be our quick topic, so I'm going to stop us there. I think just one overall thing, and if you have thoughts on this, go ahead, and then we'll close this one out, is as a Republican, Chris is right, they're not going to care if they screw us. But as a Republican, I can say this, that even if they do redistrict out one of our people, I mean, they're going to go after LaHood if they can, because he's really at this point one of the few shining stars we have in this state. So if they can take him out, they'll absolutely do that. But here's what I will say. We've seen the data. Chris, you and I have poured through the data, and I think for once you might agree with me publicly, which is the only reason the current maps work, both federally and at the state level, is because of the Donald Trump effect throughout the suburbs. Once you remove the Trump effect, a lot of these districts that are voting overwhelmingly blue will not vote as blue, because most of it is the anti-Trump vote. It's not necessarily a full-on Democratic vote versus Republican vote. I think they've been looking at a lot of Trump numbers during the Trump era. And so if they take that even further, yeah, they might win one more seat in 2026, which of course is the whole game. But when Trump is not at our headline in 28 or in 30, this will create opportunities for Republicans, because they're going to have to, by definition, dilute the vote in other districts. And so if you're looking at these maps, 26, they might be able to screw us, but we could also get them back in 28 and 30.
Collin, you're missing that the Trump effect helps move some of the blue collar voters, the blue voters downstate our way. So there are places where the Trump effect, in the collar counties and the suburbs, you don't want to run with Trump on your shoulder. You'll notice that President Trump just endorsed Congressman LaHood, and that doesn't hurt him at all.
And I get that, but we're talking about if they're going to dilute 6, 14, 17, 11, like a lot of these are districts that are just way out of play for us right now because of the Trump effect. If they dilute those districts, and it's an if, so you're right, Jim.
17's not way out of play, and 13's not way out of play.
But if they dilute those in any way, they will pay the price, is my point. That's my simple point, is if they dilute those in any way, that's going to hurt them. Maybe not in 26, but it will absolutely hurt them in 28 and 30.
Let's hope so.
And take into account that we'll lose at least one more congressional seat in 2030.
We should be losing 3 in 2030. They'll cook the books.
We really should. We should lose. We should lose.
All right, let's go to the next one here. So there's, I think, as Jim well said, Democrats in Illinois always find a way to make sure they're rigging the game, or at least playing the game in the best way possible for themselves. And so at least once a cycle, if not once a session, meaning once a year, Democrats have an elections omnibus where it is packed hundreds of pages, and it is packed with little details that if you don't read the whole bill, you'll never know what they just did. And I didn't have time today to read the whole bill, but I read pieces of it and I picked out some things that I saw. But they're pushing yet another elections omnibus. Michael, I'll let you start us because you noticed something in that bill that you consider to be pretty egregious, and I'll bring up a couple things on my end, but go ahead and kick us off.
Yeah, well, as I'm sure many of the people listening know, if you're a legislator or, a statewide office holder that is not federal, you're not allowed to have fundraisers on days when the legislature is in session. But they wanted to create a carve out for statewide office holders or legislators that are running for federal office to allow them to fundraise for federal office on days when they are in session outside of Sangamon County.
Yeah. So just drive right across the border and then you're okay.
So Juliana Stratton can, drive down to Christian County or somewhere else outside of Sangamon and hold a fundraiser for her U.S. Senate campaign, while all the other legislators are locked out of fundraising on those days because they're in session.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious what they're doing. I mean, you've got other legislators also running for federal office, so it'll benefit them as well. But this is the kind of thing they do. I mean, they own every lever of government in the state. They could do whatever the heck they want. There's other things in this bill that I want to point out, but obviously this one, certainly hits home. You've got, Stratton, who's struggling with fundraising, and her and Pritzker have got a lot of relationships in Springfield. You've got to imagine she wants to host a bunch of fundraisers with lobbyists, and, she's not taking corporate PAC money, so she needs that money from lobbyists and other groups. And the reason why lawmakers want to host their fundraisers during session is because that's when they're all in Springfield. So you can get the lobbyists, you can get the PACs, they're all there. So after session ends, hey, let's go have some drinks and cut me a check. Like, it's a lot more convenient to raise funds that way. So of course they'd find some way to fit a carve out in there that benefits some of their candidates. So not a super big surprise. A couple things I noticed in this bill, and I'll see what you guys think about some of this too. There's also a change to how ballots will be handled when they're thrown out. So if a ballot is rejected, voters have to be notified, and they've changed how that notification process is done. And now you no longer have to have a notary guarantee that you are the person who did indeed sign that affidavit and send it in and say you were the one who voted. Now you can just self-attest and say, yep, that was me. So if, again, I'm not one of those who screams voter fraud at every angle. There are people in my party who do. That's not me. But if you're trying to make this as easy as possible to ballot harvest, ballot stuff, and maybe even cheat, this is a pretty good way to do it, where no longer do that signature have to be proven by a notary that, oh yeah, that is that person. I could just take that form and say, yep, that was me, send it in, and now that vote has to be counted. Seems to be a not necessarily a good government change here when it comes to voting.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Collin. I mean, I'm not one to point out, and say that there's tons of voter fraud, and I don't think there is. But I do think that the ballot harvesting practices have just gotten extreme and out of hand and just continue to grow. And, I think this bill also expands that. And the thing that I found interesting that was missing from this was a thing about showing your ID to vote. You're doing this whole election omnibus bill, and just that little thing of showing a photo ID to vote seemed like that would be real interesting.
There were pages and pages, Jim, in this bill about IDs, specifically when it comes to when you're getting or renewing your ID.
Yeah.
And when it comes to automatic voter registration, it's actually gotten out. So in this bill, this is one of the other things that I noticed. In this bill, when it comes to automatic voter registration, you used to be allowed, or currently are allowed, to just check a box and say, yeah, I don't really actually want to be registered. Right. This bill now strips that out, where now they actually will still automatically register you and then mail you something and say, you've been added. And if you don't want to be registered, you now need to fill this out and mail it back to us. Otherwise, we're going to automatically register you.
Well, it also automatically signs you up for vote by mail, doesn't it?
I didn't get to that point in this bill, so I can't speak to that on
I'm
this
not
bill.
positive about that, but I know in one iteration it automatically signed you up for permanent vote by mail.
I think that was a separate bill that
Yeah.
didn't really go.
But
Maybe
one,
so.
one more thing I noticed in
I
this,
do remember us talking about that.
one more
Yeah.
thing I noticed in this bill was just when it
Again,
came
just
to
put in there, you got to show your photo ID before you vote.
Yeah, another thing I noticed in this, again, kind of to Jim's point, but the opposite here, is that they changed a lot of the language where they've made it harder to deny voter registration based on citizenship status. If you read through it, basically they're trying to make it so that you can just affirm, where it says like if they're not a citizen, but they don't give us anything that proves they're not a citizen, then we can just say, hey, listen, tell us whether or not you're a citizen. But by the way, if you lie, you could get in trouble. I'm overgeneralizing. I'm being a little bit dramatic, but read the language. That's basically what it is. There's a whole section on if they give us something that proves they're not a citizen, well, then we can't actually make them registered to vote. But if they give us something that we can't tell, well, then we have to put it in an automated system that no other human touches, and they just have to self-attest. Again, I'm generalizing, but there's some significant changes in here to voter registration and checking their citizenship status, which again, I don't get the point of it other than if you're trying to create loopholes where those who are not citizens can get registered at the state level. Otherwise, why are you creating this loop? Why are you doing it?
My Canadian driver's license would let me vote then?
That one wouldn't, but I do get the joke. All right, that's everything I noticed. I don't know if you guys saw anything or if you just want to react to everything we talked about.
If a person who's not a citizen registers to vote, doesn't that automatically disqualify them from, I mean, that's grounds for removal?
If you have to actually check it, though.
Well, somebody is there.
Nobody in the Secretary of State's office is checking it. I mean, there's even a provision in there, Dan, where they now say it's new. Look at it, it's new language where it has to be put in an automated system with no employees looking at it. Like, why else are you adding these provisions if you actually want to make sure people are legally allowed to vote before you register them? It makes no sense.
Well, the database for comparison has been opened up, so now that we groups can compare voter registration.
Can.
Well, and they will. And it's happening, and it's happening all over the country. And Illinois has been sued to release that information, and they'll have to.
And Dan, I just to clarify, because you and I are having some fun with this, but I don't think our audience is going to get it. Your point is there are people outside of the government structure who are doing these checks because it needs to be done. My point is there are now provisions being added to make sure it doesn't happen on the government side, which to me seems kind of ridiculous.
So, I mean, we're talking to people who are interested or are running for office, one of the things that you really need to make a point about is that the sacred honor and privilege of being an American citizen is being able to vote for your leadership. And when you dilute that by registering and allowing people who aren't here legally to participate in that process, it dilutes your vote and it corrupts what we're trying to do. So, it's an issue I think that candidates need to be well aware of. And I hope that they can, the federal government will require voter ID. That bill's in DC. I think it's cleared the House. It's in the Senate. Hopefully it'll get attached to an appropriations bill and it will require for federal elections. They can't do it for state elections, but for federal elections, you have to show an ID to vote. So if you don't show an ID, you're going to have to print a separate ballot that doesn't include the federal elections. I don't know how Illinois is going to get around it, but it's going to make it very, very difficult to avoid requiring a voter ID. And it's going to happen in this country, the whole country. It will happen.
Chris, I know you were trying to jump in. Why don't you close this out here?
Well, you stole my thunder because I want to talk about ballot curing, but that's what I talked about last week in our Discord server when Butler sent the bill. Like, there's a lot more in this than just whatever Butler sent. This ballot curing stuff is interesting because I've actually been involved in something like this before because I had a referendum that went down to one vote. And when you have elections that go down to so few votes, ballot curing is a pretty good way to pick up a few more votes. And all of this is 100% super duper legal. And my understanding for the reason why they're doing this is because it has to do with, Americans with disabilities and things like that. That's not what I want to get into. What I want to get into here is that Republicans have no excuse not to do this ballot, not to do ballot. The Democrats are getting really good at it, guys. They are. So the Democrats are making it even easier for them to do ballot curing. So there's no reason why Republicans can't be doing this. We talk about vote by mail, and people pay consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars to have them make PowerPoints about how to vote by mail. But for God's sake, the Democrats are literally giving you how to win elections with vote by mail. And year after year after year, the Republican Party bangs their heads together trying to think, well, guys, I wonder how we could use vote by mail to our advantage. The Democrats seem to be doing it pretty effectively. This is how you do it. They just made it 10 times easier. You don't even need a notary. You have a ballot that got rejected and it was a college kid down in Urbana-Champaign. You can't get a notary down there. Okay, all you gotta do is a test. Here you go. Yep, you're a test. All right, sounds good. Send the ballot back.
Yeah, and Chris, I think we have seen this firsthand. Election night, Republicans celebrate and think the job is done. Democrats don't stop on election night. Like, they are curing ballots. They are making sure that those vote by mail ballots are getting in. They're in the clerk's office making sure that provisional ballots are for their candidates from their voters are being taken. Like, we've got to recognize that election day is not the end of this process. And ballot curing, I've never seen Republicans talk about ballot curing, but when you've got some of these close races, we've seen the machine Democrats have for curing ballots. And I, again, have never seen a Republican campaign actually focus on it. So this shows another area where Republicans need to make gains if we're going to make gains in these elections.
Shameless plug. I'm the only guy on this podcast who's probably done ballot curing before. I might be one of the few operatives in the state who's done ballot curing before. Just throwing it out there, guys.
I love how Chris makes assumptions, not even knowing the work I've done in my 20 years of politics, but I'll let you continue to think that, Chris. All right, let's move to the next one here. Another thing that just probably isn't going to happen, but whatever, who knows? Let's talk about the Bears. So I am in agreement with the many, many people I've seen who have been saying that nobody understands what the Bears strategy is here for the bill pass that they want to be able to help them move to Arlington Heights. As a matter of fact, at this point, it seems like there's so much frustration down in Springfield, they will pass that bill, but just make sure it's not applicable to stadiums. So any other large infrastructure project will be able to take advantage of these new changes, this agreed, whatever it is, the negotiated process for taxes. But the Bears, that's how much frustration there is with the Bears. I don't know what their strategy is here. I'll admit, obviously I do want to see them move out, but that's just selfish because it'd be right down the street from my house. That'd be pretty awesome. But in reality, it's hard to reward, a franchise that does things so poorly. And as a huge Bears fan, I could admit my franchise continues to do things poorly. Other than hiring Ben Johnson, there's not a lot you can tell me we've done well in the last 20 years. Or since 1986, basically. So there's another thing where the Bears seem to be dropping the ball. I don't see this passing. I don't know how they push this across the finish line. At this point, it's probably a 2026 thing, but what do you guys think? Everybody but Chris, at least, since he's a Packers fan.
Well, I mean, again, that pilot funding for the things is, we'll take the benefit today and we'll pay you later, or we'll pay you today so we don't have to pay you down the road. And it's, I'm skeptical of that. I also, probably am in a minority here, but I would like to see the Bears stay in the city of Chicago. So, I guess my 2 cents, and doesn't really matter, and I'm a Lions fan too, so that really kind of discounts me. So
cut him off. Somebody cut that man off.
I'm a Michigan kid. I grew up in Michigan.
There you go. Well, hey, listen. At least you got a decent team to cheer for, so it's hard to be angry.
But for many years they were horrible. And when you look at Detroit and you look at what they did with the stadiums and the stadium district in the city of Detroit, it saved the city of Detroit. I mean, what's left there? And if you're bleeding jobs and no one can afford to live downtown, having people come in for concerts and sporting events kind of museums. I mean, it's the tourism that's going to save the city of Chicago, because nothing else looks like it's going to. So when you move the Bears outside of the city of Chicago, I'm not sure that's a brilliant idea.
At least not for
Well, I think-
Chicago. But you know what? They've had how many chances over the last few years to
I know.
actually try to take care of the team, and they continue to refuse. At a certain point, I don't blame the team for being like, "Fine, screw you guys."
Well,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, we've told stories on this podcast. This was, you know, over the years we've seen story after story after story of the Bears like, okay, can we please just have X? Can we open a store? No, you can't, but you can have a couple shops in some of our L stops.
Right.
Like it's just they're treated like second class citizens in their own city. So yeah, I don't blame them for wanting to move out and actually have a real NFL stadium.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I see that.
But they're
point.
bungling it is the clear point.
I just wish that we could work with them to find a way to keep them in the city of Chicago.
Yeah, if that was possible.
we need to get them back here. We need to get them back in Decatur. This is where they came from. This is where they started.
You're the weirdest panel for this topic. I got to tell you.
Literally, nobody's a Bears fan here except you, Collin. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, then let's just move on. It was never a major topic, anyways. All right, so we will talk immigration as our last official topic. But with immigration, there's a little bit of a veto session angle and then a lot of just what's in the news. So we're going to end our veto session discussion with just a catch-all. You all have any topics? I know, Chris, you got assisted suicide. I want to talk briefly about the Tier 2 pensions. So, like, this is just sort of your catch-all. Is there anything else from veto you haven't had a chance to talk about other than immigration that you'd like to talk about? Here's your chance. Chris, I'll let you start us off.
So assisted suicide bill passed the House back in regular session. Had 7 dissensions from the Democratic Party, 5 noes, 2 presents. There was a few non-voting. I think it was 4 non-votings. This isn't really a slam dunk issue for Democrats, and I think they know that. That's why I think they've been kind of playing it coy with this whole assisted suicide bill in the Senate, because originally it started in the Senate. Nobody even knew the House bill was a thing until it literally went to the House floor and they voted on it. Okay. So I think that they've been playing it really slow with assisted suicide because it's not as sexy as abortion is. Okay, it's not as sexy as other social issues is. This is something that clearly the far left social engineers of the Democratic Party certainly want. Okay, the kill grandma bill goes up there with the kill babies bills, and they definitely want this to get through. But you'd have to look really hard to actually see this moving through right now. It actually does not need to go through the committee again because it's the same bill that was just voted on in the House previously. The same bill as a previous Senate bill that had passed the executive committee. So I'm really interested to see if this passes. It doesn't seem like the advocates for this are very, very confident right now. They're playing confident, but even then they're not playing overly confident. And the fact that they're starting to trickle this into the press tells you that they're not very confident as at this point. I would wager, because I'm a pessimist. You guys know I'm a pessimist. I would wager because this was sat on for so long and had very little press coverage. I would probably say this bill is going to get called and probably going to pass. It shouldn't. For all intents and purposes, legalizing assisted suicide in the state of Illinois is a step too far socially. I think a lot of Democrats in the legislature understand this, which is why they haven't really been advertising this to the world. But it's also one of those things where I think the opposition for this had a really good start with this bill or with this whole legislation. They had a really good start to this. They had some really strong, showings at hearings, at committee meetings. And because this was sat on for so long, you're not seeing that same level of opposition show up this late. And I think that's what some legislators need to see. I don't mean like just the right to life people, because obviously as a right to lifer, I know that like the right to lifers aren't taken seriously down in Springfield, but like you need like genuine stories of people who have dealt with elderly people going through the end of their lives and how assisted suicide is actually a bad thing and how it's a payout to insurance companies and things like that. That's what you need people talking about. If it doesn't pass, I'll be very happy. Very happy.
But Chris, the playbook on this one, you're right, is pull it away, let the opposition die down, then try to sneak it through in the waning hours of veto session. And every year, I mean, Dan can speak to this. Every year, it seems there's something that we're like, oh, that passed. So again, people who are watching this will know more than we know. But I wouldn't be shocked if this was the thing that we're all like, wait, what the heck? That passed? So we'll see. On my side, it's just a reminder to people to continue to keep an eye on the Tier 2 pension discussion. From what I'm seeing, it's going to be pushed to the spring, the next session to be discussed. But this is the kind of thing that, it's well known that Chris and I are pro-labor Republicans, so I understand that maybe we would be, a little more favorable towards fixing some of the issues with the Tier 2 pensions. But this has become, as always, a bit of a Christmas tree where, hey, if we've got to fix the safe harbor issue, let's do a whole bunch more here and basically make it so that Tier 2 is the same as Tier 1. And one of the only reasons why we have begun to see improvements in our fiscal long-term fiscal outlook in the state is the move to Tier 2 pensions. Now, we could find some sort of happy middle ground where we're taking care of our employees in the state. I get that, but that's not typically what happens in a state like Illinois. There is the reasonable approach, and then there's, we could go past something that gets us a whole bunch of votes and door knockers and donations. Let's go do that. So continue to keep an eye on this because it's not going to go away. They're going to have to do something. So don't let the assisted suicide bill be the sort of the template here where you just, we haven't heard about it in a while, and then suddenly, wait, they just voted on it. Like, pay attention to this. It's something that's going to be happening, and it will have a huge impact on the long-term fiscal impact or fiscal health of this state.
Yep.
Anything else? All right, so let's go to the last thing here, but it's going to be its own, topic. Let's go to immigration. So briefly, we can talk about how there's some legislation that was proposed down in Springfield dealing with immigration. They found some problems in the bill, so they pulled it. They put it back in again. Again, we're recording this Thursday afternoon. We don't know if it's passing or not. I don't know. I don't really have a lot of thoughts about what they're pushing because I don't know much about it. I don't know if you guys do. Quickly, any thoughts on that before I open it up to a broader immigration discussion? Hearing nothing? All right, let me open it up to the bigger immigration discussion, which is some big developments this week in this space. So in Clark County, you had a situation where you had an illegal immigrant who was driving, got into an accident and killed 2 people. This individual who was driving was not in the U.S. legally. According to Senator Chapin Rose, the state police were ordered not to release the citizenship status of this suspect. Apparently, the Clark County Sheriff had an ICE detainer for this individual, but isn't allowed to enforce it, obviously, under the Trust Act. Ted Dabrowski campaign came out with, a big statement on this. Of course, Pritzker's spokesperson at Capitol Facts, Rich Miller, had to be like, well, the dude was from Indiana, so why are we even talking about this? It's like, okay, as somebody who's not here legally, who kills 2 Illinois residents, we should probably talk about that, even if that person lived in Indiana who did this. So there's something there to talk about. There's the DOJ indictments against 6 individuals, including Chris's favorite congressional candidate, Kat Abigazala, if you can ever actually say her name right. So
you did good there. That was the best you've done so far, Collin.
Listen, I'm pretty talented. What can I say? And so there's that situation, which if Kat is smart and she has already been fundraising off this, she could probably use this as a pretty big boon to her candidacy. And then not last, actually, there's another one, but in Palatine, not a lot of people saw this, but I live in Palatine, so I've been seeing nothing but this. There's a brouhaha because there was an immigration action where an individual was being detained, and a police officer was there, a Palatine police officer was there, and saw that the crowd was getting more and more agitated, was trying to keep peace, and bent down and started to help detain that individual by holding their arm. Under the Trust Act, that is not allowed. And so that has become a big thing here in Palatine. And then last, there's Governor Pritzker, who I think did a pretty smart PR thing, going to Kristi Noem and saying, please just let the kids have their Halloween. Please, please, please. Kristi Noem has replied today, heck no, that's not going to happen. So a lot related to immigration this week. Pick your topic, pick your poison. What are your thoughts? Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot. Kick us off. I know you were honked off about the Clark County thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth on that because, there were some people that were, criticizing the sheriff's department for how they handled it. And they, released a press release saying, well, our hands are tied because of, the Illinois policies. The Trust Act doesn't allow them to do much in that manner, in that, in a situation like that. I was watching Fox News briefly last night, and Brett Baer was talking about, Kat getting indicted, and he was having a really difficult time pronouncing her last name as well. So I think we're all in the same boat on that.
That's intentional, Butler. That's what the Fox News anchor do with every time it's a foreign name. They try and make it sound more ridiculous than it actually is.
Maybe, I don't know,
He
but
tried
I mean,
that 3
I
times
got to
and
tell
he
you, if
finally got close.
you see what Kat was doing ever since Broadview opened. I mean, this is what she's wanted. She is a smart campaigner, and this is just from a campaign perspective, not policy or governing or the issue itself, just political, because this is a political podcast. This is a huge boon to her campaign in a primary. All the other candidates had to come out with statements supporting her. She can fundraise off this. And I've said since the beginning, if you're a Republican, losing, crazy far left Jan Schakowsky and replacing her with even crazier, even further left Kat Abou-Gazala is probably a pretty good thing for Republicans in our fundraising and political efforts. So I don't mind to see the DOJ apparently helping Kat in her campaign here, because this is, if she does it right, and so far she is doing it pretty well, if she piggybacks off this is going to be a big boon to her candidacy. Just like you see Margaret Croak trying desperately to become relevant by posting things about ICE on her website in hopes that she gets herself in trouble, because that's going to really help her in her primary for comptroller. This is a tactical thing, a political thing that these candidates are doing here.
I just don't think it's a good look. I mean, obviously, it's very helpful in a Democratic primary, which, tells you everything you need to know about the Democrat electorate. But whenever you're an elected official and you're posting the license plate numbers and vehicle descriptions of law enforcement officers in the hopes of assisting people that have violated state and federal law from evading the police, I think, that's a real bad deal.
There's got to be a fist-sized hole in the wall of Daniel Biss's campaign office right now.
Absolutely.
This guy was like the anointed one. Everybody knew Daniel Biss was running for Congress. Everybody knew he was going to be a front runner in this race. And he's got this carpetbagger, free Palestine, 26-year-old Zoomer who's out here getting indicted by the feds, who has a campaign with infinitely more energy than any of the other campaigns in the 9th Congressional District have. And nobody knows what to do about this. And I've been seeing on Twitter,
Well, he's hoping the new map has her in a different district.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He's probably
maybe that's why
you don't
Biss
even have to live in the district to run. You can just run wherever you want.
That's true, but maybe that's why Biss endorsed it. Maybe Jim's right.
It's probably true. In any case, I've been seeing a lot of people on Twitter saying, like, this is going to win Kat the election. This election's over. I don't think that's the case. I still think that there's a campaign still has to happen here. Things still are going to happen. It's a very diverse district. There's 1 million people running, so who knows what could happen. Maybe Bruce Leone from the 50th Ward actually pulls it off by just getting every Orthodox Hasidic to
he's
vote
the only
for
one talking sense right now. At some of his statements, the last few days has been like, oh, the dude actually seems like semi-reasonable compared to some of these others.
But again, I must echo the sentiment that Frank Calip, I think it was Frank. If it wasn't you, I'm giving you credit for no reason. Lord knows you're not watching this podcast. But I think he said something along the lines of, like, Kat Abou-Gazala is the MAGA candidate for the 9th Congressional District, and I would like to echo that sentiment. All true MAGA patriots, this has been a verdict down from above in the Department of Justice that Kat Abou-Gazala is the Make America Great Again candidate for Congress in the 9th Congressional District, and I hope all true MAGA patriots in the 9th District will join me in my emphatic support for her.
I'll just briefly say this: living in Palatine and seeing the situation with this police officer, I just think. I just feel for our police officers, our local law enforcement in this. Like the individual, I don't know him at all. But like the individual in this situation is trying to just keep the peace and like trying to do his job and yeah,
almost
okay.
a reflex.
Yeah, I mean, this is the position we're putting our law enforcement in. Like, people are going after the state police and the Broadview police for what they do there, trying to keep the peace there in Broadview outside the ICE facility. Like, this is where we are now, where both sides have so hyper politicized this. And who's paying the price? It's local residents, it's local people, it's our local law enforcement who are just trying to do their damn jobs. I feel for this individual. Yeah, legally he was not supposed to do what he did. I recognize that, but the poor guy is just trying to keep the peace, and that's the position we're putting our law enforcement into. When we're playing politics with people's lives on an issue like this, we could all do a hell of a lot better. And I hope this officer that doesn't have long-term repercussions for this, because clearly he wasn't trying to do anything wrong. He was trying to do the right thing.
We have job openings.
This is one of those problems that could be solved in, Politics 101 is don't solve the problems that turn out your base. But you know, it's pretty simple. If you're in this country illegally, you shouldn't be here. And if you want to come to this country legally, we should find ways to make that straightforward, safe, direct, easy. I mean, come on, we can figure this out. It's not hard. And
But the will has to be there, Jim, as
the
you
will
said.
has to be there.
Both parties have decided that this issue helps them in elections, so therefore we're just never going to fix the immigration issue in this country, which is
And as
eminently
voters,
frustrating.
we need to make sure that we're holding our elected officials accountable and saying fix this problem, because you know you could make the whole state of Texas the Ellis Island of this generation, and or just El Paso, make El Paso the Ellis Island of this generation, hold people there for 30 days, and maybe Duluth in Minnesota for the people coming over in Canada, and hold people there, find out who they are, get them here, get them put to work. You know, this problem is solvable, and you're like you said, you're messing with people's lives, and you're putting people in a really bad position that we don't need to be putting people into.
Yeah.
You know, that's not what this country's about.
Last thing I have on this topic, just to point out, we always like to point out things we notice, which is it's clear the left has settled on a specific message, and I want you guys to be aware of it as our audience. As you see, so Jenny Levin, she's the Democratic candidate for House District 51. If you thought Nabila Saeed was far left, just wait until you see the new candidate the Democrats are running in 51. Sheesh. But she, in her statement on this, as she rallied people to protest outside the police department, she called it kidnapping by, federally supported kidnapping of our neighbors. And then you see some of the comments on the police Facebook post, kidnapping by a fascist regime. And you see it elsewhere. There was Daniel Biss made a comment about, people are looking for brown-skinned landscapers to kidnap in Evanston. And another story in the Lake County News Sun, where Dulce Ortiz is saying that they're going throughout the county and kidnapping people. This is clearly the word they have chosen, is to describe this as kidnapping. I don't have anything deep to tell you other than just we try to point out trends we see. Be aware that's the message clearly that Democrats have chosen here, that they're going to push, that ICE and federal law enforcement and anybody else who supported them are kidnapping residents. That's the impression they're trying to push. Be aware of it, because they're winning the messaging battle. They're winning the PR battle on this fight. And we got to get a heck of a lot better on our side if we're going to, somehow play this game, because we're not playing it really well right now. All right, let me take us to our second to last segment, news you can use. So just a couple this week, and then we're going to close down. First one here, thanks to Greg Bishop in the Center Square for shining a light on this. DCFS has yet another problem. They're yet again in the news. The number of missing foster children who are on the radar of the state's child welfare agency showed from 2023 to 2024 a 935% increase. From 16 in 2023 to 166 in 2024. The agency says those numbers are not completely accurate. They're going to release new numbers, but this is what we deal with all the time in DCFS. They can't even release accurate numbers of the missing children under their care because it is so horribly run. I mean, we keep seeing this. We keep being told J.B. Pritzker's the administrator-in-chief. He does such a great job. Like, DCFS can't even release a report accurately on how many missing kids there are. Like, this is what drives us crazy. Could we please actually focus on fixing the problems in the state of Illinois? Because you talk about DCFS, that is our most vulnerable population in this state. If we can't do right by them, then we're not doing right by anybody in this state. So stop running for president if you can't even fix DCFS in your own home state.
There's a bill in the House. It may be in the Rules Committee again. And I know one of the authors of the bill, or chief supporters, is Noreen Hammond. But this bill gives DCFS and all of the agencies that they contract immunity from lawsuits. And this is terrible. I mean, your parents have no recourse against this agency, this $1 billion+ agency, and the people they hire. I mean, they're using interns to take children out of people's homes. And Noreen, and I know Noreen's one of the chief sponsors of this bill, which I find terribly egregious. I fought in DCFS for 6 years, still involved in a lawsuit against them with a good friend of mine. And to think that we should grant legal immunity to DCFS and their subcontractors is it drives me crazy.
Well, let me, this is a quick section, so I do appreciate your thoughts, and I want to get us to the next one, but thank you for sharing your thoughts on that one. Next one here is, so let's talk about DEI. I know in Trump world that word already has triggered a number of you who are watching this, but Illinois has an agency that is focused on equity and inclusion. It's the Commission on Equity and Inclusion. And this is another story that we know of thanks to the Center Square, where they were pointing to their new supplier diversity management portal as one of their big accomplishments and said it would enhance their work by streamlining processes. But actually the opposite has happened. When they built their list, there were 5,400 of these DEI businesses that got preferential treatment in the state's contracting processes. Now it turns out that the number's down to 2,900. Again, they're saying it's not actually down. They're saying this program that they bought, this computer system that they bought, is actually incompatible with the state's other computer systems, and so they're not able to speak to each other. And so now it's not working. They've spent a bunch of taxpayer money on this, and it's not working. Larry Ivory, the chief executive of the state's Black Chamber of Commerce, was just incredulous about this. Apparently, this problem's existed for like a year, and they still haven't actually fixed it. And oh, by the way, there's 7 commissioners on this this agency. All of them are getting paid over $150,000. They also get stipends. They have other jobs. The commission has a 30-person staff with salaries averaging $100,000. So they can't even do the basics here. But there's a lot of jokes that could be made here. I didn't have enough time today to come up with any jokes, but you could probably come up with them on your own.
Did you see what happened in DC with the same type of program? There's a whole subset of minority-owned businesses that are going after federal contracts that don't have any employees, but they are minority-owned businesses, and they're raking off 50% of these contracts and then subbing them out to other contractors. Yeah. I wonder if this is happening in Illinois.
Yeah, it's possible. Certainly should be looked into. All right, a couple more here. We'll do these quickly. So Lane's going to bring up on screen and post for those who are watching another. We seem to have one of these a week that compares Illinois to the rest of the country. That's not on purpose. It's just what we see. And Illinois' mortgage rates are the highest in the Midwest. We're at 6.2%. Definitely the highest in the Midwest by far, and actually tied for 8th highest in the entire country. Why does this matter? We talk about property taxes being, I think, now officially the highest in the country. We've got sales taxes amongst the highest in the country, telecom taxes highest in the country, just all these different taxes and things that we pay. But when it comes to housing, when you talk about your mortgage rate, that's not your taxes. That's not the cost of the house. That's literally just the rate you pay in order to borrow. And so this is just a sunk cost if you're trying to buy a home. And when you talk about, let's say, that 1% difference with some of our neighbors in the Midwest, a 1% drop on a $300,000 mortgage would save you nearly $200 a month and tens of thousands of dollars over a 30-year mortgage. That's a big deal. And that's not even once you take into account the higher property taxes and the higher home values and everything else. We wonder why it is nearly impossible for young families, young people to start their families, buy a home, why it's nearly impossible for people to afford mortgages in Illinois, especially in the Chicagoland area. This is a huge driver of that. It's not even getting into the tax problem. It's just the mortgage rate. And you see how much of an impact that has. I don't see anybody ever talking about this, but when I saw this, it blew me away that not only are we paying among the highest property taxes, but then even just to get the dang mortgage, we're paying the highest rate on that. It's ridiculous. All right, last one. So if you've been paying attention, you know that J.B. Pritzker likes to tout all of the credit upgrades that the state of Illinois has gotten under his watch. Up until recently, it was 9. Well, it's now officially 10. You saw the big headlines from Pritzker and others. We've now had our 10th credit rating upgrade. And yet when you look at the Cranes article, and even, I gave him a little grief, so I will give him credit now, even Rich Miller and Cat Facts, pointing to all of the actual fiscal problems in the state and kind of actually being surprised that we saw a credit rating increase in Illinois. But here's the key. It's because of the overall fiscal health of the country that these rating increases have been happening, because you saw it in the Cranes article, of course, hidden a little bit, but you saw it. Oh, yeah, actually, the state still has the lowest credit rating in the entire country. So you're going to see Pritzker go out there and say, hey, 10 ratings increases. Aren't we great? We're still the lowest in the country because the numbers aren't going up because we're doing such a great job managing the finances of the state. They're going up. They were going up for a while because of the federal money that was flowing to states. Now they're going up because of the improved fiscal environment throughout the whole country. We are still last in the entire dang country. All right, that's it. Let's close down here. OG Clown of the Week. Have some fun with this. Your thoughts on anybody you want to give praise or scorn to. There's no rules. Have some fun.
OG of the Week, Matt Dietrich, the spokesperson for the State Board of Elections, who broke up the fight with Karina Villa's buddy, Pizza Joe Smith, and the Darren Bailey crew. So, he got in there and kept that from becoming a debacle. So, shout out to Matt Dietrich.
There we go. We've had to deal with Matt a number of times in his capacity, and he's always been fair and always just done the job. So I appreciate that about him.
This is two specific clowns. The Chicago Contrarian on Twitter and Dan Proft's Morning Answer. I've had this topic as a clown of the week for a long time, but when you're talking about Illinois' congressional districts, can you please post the right map? Okay, literally within a matter of, I think, a couple of hours, the Chicago Contrarian responded to Alexei Julius, who was like, wow, you really don't seem to have a problem with Illinois' congressional districts, sent draft 1 from 2021 that never got enacted, that was replaced within like a week, okay? And then a few hours later, the Dan Proft's Morning Answer posted that same map, but it looked like it was like 144p resolution for some reason. Like it had been screenshotted 6 times. Like Dan Proft was like, "Bro, I really got to post this later." Like, come on. Like you can't. How are you anywhere near Illinois politics and you can't instinctively look at a map and say that's not the right map? Am I a lunatic? Have I lost my mind? I see you have county chair people, elected officials who represent some of not the congressional districts, but like state districts saying like, look at how bad the Illinois maps are. You don't even know what they look like. So to Dan Proft and his Morning Answer on Twitter and the Chicago Contrarian, who always has told a post on Twitter, and everyone posting the wrong maps, you are my clown of the week.
I mean, it's hard to know what the correct maps are when you're, looking at Illinois maps, but you live in Naples, Florida. But who am I to judge? Who else you guys got?
Oh, hey, I'll do it. I'll go. I've got a OG of the week. Is my friend Marty McLaughlin, who had the stones to stand up in the House and apologize for voting for CJIT during this debate. Marty was. I think took a bold step. You don't hear it, you don't see it, you don't see people, elected officials, actually stand up in public and say, you know what, I shouldn't have made that vote, and it's good. I think my
if you've got an in with Marty, maybe tell him during veto session week not to talk about the 4th of July in press releases. Maybe focus on keeping your residents from being screwed with tax increases, and then next week you can send out a press release about the 4th of July.
No, I haven't seen that one. My clown of the week is Representative Croak for her involvement in trying to track down ICE people. A blatant, I think, attempt, as you've already mentioned, to have relevance in her race. I hope that we've seen other people now under the microscope of the Department of Justice for doing that. I hope that our government doesn't care if you're an elected official running for our statewide office or just an ordinary citizen. If you're interfering with our law enforcement, how would she like it if people followed her around, posted her home address, her home phone, her family, her car, and everywhere she went, told people, you need to get involved. You need to not let her in the grocery store, or not let her pick up her kids or whatever. I think it's very dangerous.
Well, and Dan, you saw them all hyperventilating when somebody happened to do a video in front of Pritzker's home, but suddenly they can actually, publicly post all this, and that's allowed.
Right.
Well, and they're even trying to pass a bill right now to, allow legislators to redact their home address, put a PO box on their driver's license, all sorts of things.
But there, some of that is, to be fair, Michael, some of that is necessary. When you saw Nicola Ha and what she went through, like some of that is necessary. But well, yeah. I do get the point that's being made.
I agree with that bill, but I'm saying that they're clowns for saying that they're address and all these things need to be protected, but we're going to publish the information of law enforcement officers. You can have it like you're either protecting government officials, including law enforcement, or you're not.
I don't think they're posting home addresses, but
No.
I do understand the larger point.
Names. They posted names.
I do understand the larger point you're making.
Well, and one other thing for probably OG of the week, and I'm not sure it's appropriate or not, but when I think about the Bailey team and everything that they've gone through this week, they've handled that very well, and it's such a sad situation, and heart goes out to all of them, but I think they've done a pretty good job of managing that and handling that, just kind of thoughts and
and prayers. Yeah, listen, we let off the episode last week with it. They still are in our prayers today, so I echo you on that, Jim.
So
I'm surprised. I don't remember who this was. Michael, I think you were posting this stuff to our internal Discord about Pritzker in his interview with Brett Baer on Fox News.
So
when Baer was like, hey, doesn't Chicago have the highest murder rate? And he's like, nah, we're not even in the top 30, because that's the lie he continues to tell. And then Baer literally shows him a map that shows Chicago's number one. And then Pritzker's reply, look, you can pull statistics up, but our murder rate's been cut in half. Like, ask anybody if they actually feel like crime is down. They're going to tell you, yeah, not so much. But
I saw the one thing that I thought that was bad enough, but then you watch more of that interview, and he's asked about the Virginia AG candidate that was wishing, death on individuals via text, which Pritzker gave the guy $20,000 campaign contribution, and Brett Baer asked if he would disavow those, messages, and he said, well, people make mistakes, and he did. I don't think he did it repeatedly, so it's like, isn't it wishing death on somebody once bad enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the point.
Repeatedly that gets you in trouble with Pritzker.
Pritzker has been lecturing us over and over about, political rhetoric, despite the fact that he's one of the biggest culprits here. But then, Michael, I saw that same thing. That was the next thing I was going to bring up. So good job. Pritzker's my clown for both of those, because his response, people make mistakes. Like when it's somebody on the left, one of his Democrats, who literally wish death on their opponents and their kids. Oh, people make mistakes is the response. Like, come on, that cannot be. Like, you've lost he lost all credibility a long time ago, but like that has to be the final nail in the coffin of Pritzker's credibility when it comes to rhetoric in the political space. All right, let me bring us back again to the DuPage County clerk debacle, because I give a lot of praise to Carrie Galassi and some of the others there in DuPage County, like Jim Zay, who've been pointing this out and bringing this to light. Turns out she actually attended a board meeting. It was her first board meeting that she had attended since being elected. And she was only there to inform the board that she's run out of money and needs more money in her 2025 and 2026 budgets. This is on top of taxpayers spending $161,000 on lawsuits because she's in a big fight with the democratically controlled board. This is Democrats fighting Democrats, and it's the DuPage County taxpayers who are paying the bill. By the way, she's refusing still to submit a budget. I think all this points to the fact that there needs to be a new DuPage County clerk, and Patricia Cladis Chiappa, and I'm sure I didn't say that 100% correct, but check her out. She's the Republican running for DuPage County clerk, and I think people of both parties could probably agree that it's time for a change there. All right, we've gone over time, so I have two more clowns, but they're more personal and more just me venting. So I'll just vent on Facebook instead. We'll close down this episode. Let's let our guests go last. So Chris, you did pretty good. Michael, you had one awesome moment, and then you kind of disappeared. So you go first.
All right, well, petitions, we're closing them out, and then it's on to the real deal. So I think everybody that's been circulating deserves an OG nomination as well, because it's tough getting, tens of thousands of signatures for statewide candidates, and even some of these state rep and state senate districts, you really have to duke it out. So keep up the good work, light at the end of the tunnel, and off to the races.
Yeah, we say that. Then it's challenge season, and sitting there and comparing every single signature and every single address. There's never a light at the end of the tunnel. It's just a training. It's just a train barreling towards you at 60 miles an hour. Chris, go ahead.
I really wish Collin had not just brought up objection season, because once Tuesday midnight, not even Tuesday midnight, once Monday at 5:00 rolls around, I'm going to bed for a week. I don't know what he's talking about. Objections, I don't know. They'll probably, you know how this state works. Everyone makes the ballot. There are no laws here. Anyway, again, like I'll echo Butler sentiment. If you circulate a petition to cycle, you're an OG of the week. Fantastic work, everybody. We still got through got until Monday, and you're over the weekend, you're going to get a lot of people calling you. If you're a petition circulator in the state of Illinois, this guy's paying 10, this guy's paying 15, this guy's paying 20, because people just can't seem to get on the ballot somehow. You know, it's up to you at this point whether or not you want the cheese. But if you circulate petitions, you did a great job. Get your package together, file by the end of the day on Monday, and have a wonderful weekend if you get a weekend. Thank you.
All right. Jim was going to get the final word, but he kind of Irish goodbye to us. Hopefully, if he jumps back in, we'll let him have the final word. But Dan, go ahead.
Thanks. Well, it's great to be with you all again. Just a quick update on the transportation bill. It looks like no tax increases are going to be coming. They're going to raid the road fund now. I think the Democrats have settled on taking $800 million sales tax out of the road fund, and also taking the interest, which I think is about $170 million a year going forward. So it looks like the transit bill is going to move. So I hope that our friends that voted for the gas tax increase, Republican friends, there's still 5 of them actively serving in the General Assembly, plus Avery Bourne, who's the chief of staff for the House Republicans, all voted for that gas tax increase to go to our roads and bridges. This is why you make a deal with the Democrats, and here we are. They're going to raid the road fund, and eventually, it was already said, we've got a lot of roads and bridges down here that need to be fixed. So that's the word that I'm getting, is how this is all going to end in the transit bill. Thanks again. A shameless plug. I don't know if you all can see this. Your good friend set a land speed record last month.
Look at that. It's a little fuzzy, but maybe if you shoot a photo to Lane, he can bring it up in post.
Okay, yeah. Set a land speed record in my truck in my class, 170 mile an hour, auditioning for a job with Jimmy John's.
There you go. I like it. Turns out I think Jim got booted off, bad internet or something. So Jim, you would have gotten the final word. Thank you so much for being with us. Jim brought the heat this week. He had a lot of really good information. So I'll give your final word as just a thank you to you, Jim, and thank you to Dan, Michael, Chris for joining. I know trying to balance this episode out with watching the news and trying to give our audience the latest information is always difficult. We will recap next week. So anything we didn't get to this week, like what Dan just talked about, we'll make sure is on the agenda next week. In the meantime, Monday is the last day for filing. So get your candidates on the ballot. Let's go fill all these seats, because there's no slating, at least at the moment. So get your ballot, your petitions filed, get on the ballot, because we can't win elections if we can't actually even make it on the ballot. So let's go.